It's good to be with you. We begin with the cookout. It is our thing, even a sacred thing. Black folks coming together, a place of good food, music, games, debate, and most important, trust. At some point, the cookout also became a litmus test for politicians who want something from us, who need us. If trusted enough, they earn that invitation, which is not to be taken lightly. It only comes if we sense authenticity, not a code switch, and it is revocable. Now more than ever, it's important to vet those who ask us to give them the edge so they can realize their dreams, usually higher office. There are questions to be asked before we cast a single ballot. What have you done for Black people lately? What did you do 3, 5, 10 years ago? Are you listening to us? Who do you take counsel from? Now is the time to keep them honest for your next local, state elections. Yes, the presidential race of 2024. But we must start vetting beyond that. The future leaders who it seems are already anointed by their respective parties and political machines. Those machines have treated us as dispensable for far too long. If we're being honest, we've allowed that. No one should be permitted to bypass this rite of passage again. A job interview with Black America, especially as we're now tightening the job requirements. With that mission in mind, I sat down with a rising star in the Democratic Party. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. President Obama campaigned for Shapiro, and there are expectations that he will one day run for the White House. So we do need to know now if his words match his record. Governor, thanks for joining us. Governor Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania. I want to begin, if we can, in the Middle East. Like President Biden, you believe there should be no daylight between Israel and the United States when it comes to eradicating Hamas. Explain to those who may not understand our commitment and the fallout really worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make clear that my focus is on eradicating Hamas, a terrorist group. And I think it's really important to note that certainly not all Palestinians are part of Hamas or even support Hamas. And I think it's critically important that we understand the difference. I also think it's very important, and we should get into this, that we not allow the situation in the Middle East to be used as an excuse or a justification for anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Arab sentiment. But relative to the question that you asked specifically about Hamas, I mean, you have to understand they launched an unprovoked attack that killed nearly 1,500 multinationals, the vast majority, of course, being Israelis, took about 250 or so people hostage, including Americans who remain hostage to this terrorist group. Slaughtering a peaceful concert goer, killing women and children and families in a kibbutz where they live, that is terrorism, plain and simple. And I think it is on all of us to call out what is so obviously wrong and what is right. There is no moral equivalency between Hamas, a foreign terrorist organization as designated by the United States of America, and Israel, the only pluralistic functioning democracy in the Middle East. Hamas is hell-bent on destroying Israel and ridding the region of Jews. They do not seek peace, and they do not seek any type of lasting compromise. I want to see this conflict end as soon as possible, but it absolutely cannot end until Hamas is eradicated and these hostages are returned safely to their homes in Israel and America or wherever they're from.
You were criticized, your initial statement that perhaps lacked something. The interviews that you gave in the beginning, the Council on American Islamic Relations CARE pointed to the fact of what you didn't say. In their view, you didn't mention Palestinian suffering in the region. And here's what the executive director of CARE said, Governor. If we truly value human rights, it is imperative that we stand in solidarity against violence. And that includes the Palestinians who continue to endure immense hardship. As the governor of Pennsylvania, all Pennsylvanians, do you believe that your initial statement lacked empathy to some non-Jews?
No, and I want to be crystal clear about something, Sharon. You keep referring to it as my initial statement. I have made those statements multiple times, including, I think, last night and the night before on MSNBC. So I've not backtracked in any way, shape, or form from any of those statements. What I have also said, and maybe you just didn't see that particular clip, is that I condemn the loss of all innocent lives, and that we need to make sure that there's a clear distinction between Hamas and between Palestinians. There is no moral equivalency here between Hamas and Israel. And let's also recognize that not every Palestinian is a member of Hamas, and they do not represent all Palestinians. Israel has a right to defend itself in the face of this unprovoked terrorist attack. While I support Israel's right to defend herself against this unprovoked terrorist attack, it doesn't mean that I support all the different policies that Israel's engaged in, certainly not over the last number of years under Netanyahu's leadership. So again, I've been entirely consistent throughout. Relative to that letter that came to me from CARE, understand that I have reached out and have had multiple dialogues with Arab community leaders, Muslim leaders, Palestinian American leaders here in Pennsylvania. We've met here in this office. I'm in the governor's office here in the Capitol, and I've engaged in meaningful, thoughtful dialogue with them. And I've shared with them my profound sadness for the loss of life that they have experienced, the suffering that they and their families have experienced. And I've also made clear that we can't use this as a justification for any type of anti-Arab sentiment, any Islamophobia, or any anti-Semitism. And so again, my position has been clear and consistent throughout. I do not think it's mutually exclusive to believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, that we need to eradicate that region of Hamas, of that terrorist group, and also mourn the loss of innocent lives and care deeply about Arab American lives and Palestinian American lives and others.
Even CARE referenced that you have a long-standing history of communicating effectively with all constituents, including them. If I missed it, as you said, Governor, do you think there is a disconnect and more repair or more outreach needs to be done?
Well, we continue to dialogue seemingly every day and having real meaningful conversations. By the way, not just now, but the kind of conversations I've had over 2 decades in public office with the Muslim community, with the Arab American community here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to continue to have that dialogue. And let me be clear, I'm going to continue to stand up to any type of hate or intolerance, directed toward American Jews or directed toward American Muslims or American Arabs. I'm here in the state capitol right now. And just outside my window here, the front steps, Sharon, there was a protest about what's happening in the Middle East. And I want to be clear about something. I vehemently disagreed with the political sentiments that were being shared by the speakers on the Capitol steps. Yet, I'll tell you what, I was pleased to see their peaceful demonstration here in America in the place founded by William Penn, on a place of tolerance and understanding and bringing different perspectives together. Now, at the end of that rally, and again, one that I fully supported occurring, even though I disagreed with the message, at the end of that rally, there was a man who approached some of the peaceful protesters and brandished a weapon and made threats against them that law enforcement investigated and within a couple days determined should be charged as an act of ethnic intimidation. That's a word for our hate crimes law here in Pennsylvania. And I immediately came out and condemned that. We can't allow, as I said earlier, any of the situation in the Middle East to be used as an excuse for Islamophobia or anti-Semitism or any other type of hate. In this place that Penn built, we need to find ways to bring people together, to create a greater understanding, and to stand up for people's right to peacefully protest, whether we agree or disagree with their underlying political views.
Yeah, tolerance, right, Governor? Still, hate crimes against Jewish Americans are on the rise greatly. And I wonder what you make of that, how concerned you are about the safety, overall well-being of Jewish Americans, and what do you believe is the root of this increase?
Well, look, I'm concerned about the safety and well-being of all Pennsylvanians. It is also true that we have seen a significant rise in anti-Semitism. It was rising before October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel, and we've seen it almost like a hockey stick really escalate in over the last month or so. And there's no excuse for that. Now, we will take action through law enforcement, through different policies and efforts in our state government. But I think the public has a lot of responsibility here, too. It's not just up to government officials to enforce. I think we have a responsibility to know our history. I think we have a responsibility to understand how conflicts like this have evolved over hundreds, in this case, thousands of years. Understanding that there is a difference between agreement or disagreement with a political personality in a particular state, country, region, and the underlying, plight or goals of a group of people. I'm being a little bit clumsy here. I apologize, Sharon, but what I'm trying to get at here is, I am someone who believes in Israel's right to exist. I am someone who believes in a two-state solution where you have a peaceful Palestinian country and a peaceful Israel living side by side. And I am someone who believes Benjamin Netanyahu has not been a good leader for Israel in recent years. I don't get a vote in that. I'm just giving you my perspective. And yet I'm also someone who believes that you can disagree on the politics. You can have views on the particular immediate political situation, but not engage in anti-Semitism, not engage in Islamophobia. We have to learn our history and have a deeper understanding of that, so we're not engaging those issues while still being able to speak out strongly about our political views on a geopolitical issue.
Yeah, I want to talk about that education though, because it's not that simple, right? If you have people who have dug in on either side of this, and there is no equivalent when you're talking about slaughtering innocent people who are just trying to live, breathe, celebrate. They were celebrating in fellowship with each other. But there is this notion that, I'm entrenched on this side or that side. So I want to push you to be specific if you can. You got a great film industry in Philadelphia. You have other ways to educate people. How do you do it?
Look, one of the things I'm trying to do is bring more Holocaust education to our schools. I think if you don't understand the Holocaust, then it's very hard to understand what happened in 1948, the establishment of Israel. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Israel doesn't exist because of the Holocaust. Israel existed long before, thousands of years before that. We should know that history as well. But that immediate history, that anti-Semitism that was allowed to, pervade through Germany and through Europe, and then turn into policies of hatred and fear and then destruction and death, is something that didn't happen all that long ago. Yet, study after study seems to show that over 60% of our high school kids don't know about that. I think that's an important place to start, to understand that. I think it's really important to understand what happened in 1948 after the UN partition plan, after the Palestinians were given a homeland for them, the Israelis given a homeland for them, and then the next day the Palestinians went to war over that. I think it's important that people know that. I think it's important to understand the history of what's happened in Gaza and in the West Bank, the attempts by the United States to make peace, attempts that each and every time the particular leaders leading the Palestinian people at the time, from Yasser Arafat on, walked away from those peaceful overtures. That should be factored in to how people view the current situation. I'm not suggesting, Sharon, that we're all going to agree on what the prescription is going forward. We're going to have disagreements. That's fair, as long as we're having disagreements that aren't bringing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, et cetera, into the conversation. But in order to, I think, make a thoughtful pronunciation about what direction you think we should go in now, you got to understand that history. And I've just cited only a few examples of the broader history that I think is really important that people pay attention to. So whether we're going to learn it in school, whether you're going to take time to really inform yourself on the internet, on TikTok, wherever you go to get your news, we've got to make sure that people understand that history so they make a thoughtful argument about the future.
Yeah, there's a history on American soil too, a long-standing communal sense between the Jewish American community and Black Americans through the civil rights marches and issues and fighting alongside each other. It occurs to me, and I think some of the polls, Governor, are showing there seems to be an erosion. How much is debatable, but what do you make of it? What can be done to communities that do need each other?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I can react to any particular poll, but I understand the point of your question. I think, we talked a moment ago, Sharon, about learning our history. Folks should study the history of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the partnership that they formed in order to advance the civil rights movement, understanding that when Jews were being attacked for being Jewish, it was the Black community that was there that had their back. And in the civil rights movement, as Dr. King was moving that along and making progress through governmental actions, it was Jews who were quite literally marching alongside Black leaders, along with many other people. But that shared history, both the negative, that is being attacked for what you look like or being attacked for how you worship or how you were raised, as well as the positive progression that we have made, that is part of our shared history. And I think it is something that we need to find our way back to. It goes back to the question you asked before about what can be done. I think education is a key piece of this. I, for one, spend a significant amount of time in our Black churches, in our Baptist churches, our AME churches. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is not only listening, but also talking about that spirit of Heschel and King continuing today in our society and using that to strengthen our communities, going back to what Penn envisioned. I'm not sure he would have imagined me sitting at this desk in the office that bears his portrait, but certainly he was trying to build a place that was inclusive and tolerant. And we need to find our way back to that. Blacks and Jews have had that great history together, and we need to do everything we can to experience that again. And I think through experiential learning, through textbooks, through the internet, that's a really important part of this. And I view my role as governor, as a proud American Jew, and as someone who oversees a Commonwealth of 13 million people. It includes Jews, Blacks, you name it. I have to be someone that tries to lift everyone up and bring people together. And I think education is a key piece of that.
Representative Cori Bush out of Missouri, other leaders point to that there seems to be this solidarity, not seems, there is, between Black Americans and Palestinian Americans who have been there for each other through Ferguson, George Floyd, and they rooted in racial justice, the fight for it.
And they deserve our support to stand up and speak out and not allow anyone, not even our administration, to okay the bombing of a land of people.
Do you think that leaders such as yourself are equipped to understand the many layers of this and why there would be this solidarity between the two communities?
I certainly think I'm equipped to understand it, but I also recognize I'm constantly learning and evolving. And so I want to hear from different voices in Pennsylvania that are going to help me through that process. We may, at the end of those conversations, at the end of those meetings, at the end of those sessions, have different views on the political solutions, right? But we should understand that history. And to your point, I think you used, Sharon, the word the layers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think those layers are important for leaders to understand. I think I've got a good feel for it, but I could always learn more. And that's why I listen to the good people of Pennsylvania. That's why I show up in their churches. That's why I invite different groups, whether they agree with me or disagree with me, here to my office to talk. It's why I go to their community centers to listen. So we have that kind of dialogue here in Pennsylvania, and I'm very proud of that.
Your openness, your engagement, you've been on really the national stage for a good while now, Governor. And I wonder if I could ask you perhaps a personal question. Who do you seek guidance from?
That is a fair question. I seek it from a lot of different people and in a lot of different ways. And I'm not trying to evade your question, but I've never been someone who's been able to say, oh, that's the one person I look up to. That's my role model. That's my mentor. I've just never been like that. What I try and do is, take different things from different people that help make me a better man, a better father, a better public servant. I've learned from some other public officials. I learned from pastors who invited me into their churches. I've learned from a number of people. I would say probably maybe the last conversation I have on most things is with my wife, who I've been with since the 9th grade. She's someone who not only knows me better than anybody else, but she can challenge me in a way that maybe others feel like they can't, and force me to think about things different, or say, hey, you should really go ask that person what she thinks or he thinks. You should really, maybe redouble your efforts to understand that issue a little deeper before you speak about it, whatever the case may be. So she probably challenges me more than anyone. And then, kind of viewing the world through my children's eyes. Laura and I are blessed with 4 amazing kids. A daughter is 22, and then 3 sons, 18, 14, and 12. And when I hear them explain back to me what they see happening in the world, right? So I kind of hear it from their perspective. That affects me. I know we're not really talking about criminal justice reform issues, but if I may, I'd just like to cite an example that I think elucidates the answer to your question. For a long time, I sort of struggled with the issue of capital punishment, of the death penalty. And full disclosure, when I ran and won for Attorney General, I ran saying I would support the death penalty in the most heinous of cases. And then as Attorney General, I was never able to deploy or use the death penalty. And it was one day when my then roughly 10, 11-year-old son asked me about the death penalty. When my son asked me why it was okay to kill someone who killed someone else, I couldn't look him in the eye and answer that question. Over time, my thoughts on this issue have evolved. I've spoken to a lot of victims, to families, to advocates, to community leaders, and to my son. All of these conversations have stayed with me. And through that experience, 2 critical truths became clear to me about capital sentencing in our Commonwealth. The system is fallible, and the outcome is irreversible. I will not sign any execution warrants during my time as governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And when you have to look in the eyes of your child and explain something, and they kind of give you that look, it really forces you to rethink something. And then ultimately, as a result of, a life of listening, the lived experiences that I had, showing up in communities that viewed that issue different than me, and then ultimately having to look my kid in the eye and explain that to them, I ended up changing my position, which is not something public officials do that often. And I've been very outspoken about how I changed my views on capital punishment. I realize there are people who are going to listen to us, watch us, who are going to differ from me on it. But I couldn't justify a broken capital punishment system to my 10 or 11-year-old son and look him in the eye and justify the position I had taken. And so I changed my views. I share that with you because, again, I'm not looking to one person or another to give me all the answers to everything. I've got people around me who challenge me, who educate me, who force me to confront issues in a different way. And that's how I grow and evolve as a man, as a father, as a public servant. And, I'm going to continue to do that. I'm certainly not perfect. I'm going to try and get better at this job every day and better at being a man, a dad, and a governor.
Yeah, never a more authentic conversation than with a child, eye to eye.
Yeah.
And hey, not perfect, Governor, but the fact that you are taking counsel from the wife, pretty close. Okay. I want to talk, if we can, I know we're almost out of time, about the recent election and what it tells us, women, minorities, willingness to show up for principles. What does it tell us?
I think real freedom has been on the ballot through multiple cycles. And if I may, I'm going to be a little parochial and just talk about Pennsylvania. But I'm sure your viewers know we're the ultimate swing state here. And so I think it sort of tells a story that is helpful to the rest of the country. I ran a campaign on, yes, of course, delivering better schools for our kids and safer communities, an economy that was going to lift everybody up, and also on protecting real freedom, the freedom for women to be able to make decisions over their own bodies, the freedom to marry who you love, the freedom to be able to worship where you want, and of course, our most fundamental freedom, protecting the right to vote, which the former president and his enablers tried to undermine.
If you want to save your rights and liberties, you have to start by dealing a really humiliating rebuke to the radical left in this upcoming election.
I fought back against that and won. And so I think what you saw in my historic election, historic in terms of the number of votes we received to win the governorship, the election here in Pennsylvania, was really a continuation of that.
Let me begin by simply saying, thank you, Pennsylvania.
You saw in places like Kentucky, where you wouldn't expect to see it, real freedom won. The right for women to be able to make decisions over their own bodies, the right to be able to cast your ballot and have it count for the person that you support. I think what we're hearing from the American people over and over again in these elections is that they don't want the long arm of restrictive government, which is what Donald Trump and his enablers bring, undermining real freedom.
Well, that didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to.
And I think what you've seen consistently is the Democratic Party, which I'm proud to be a part of, has been the party of addition. We want to add to your rights and freedoms. And the Republicans have been the party under Trump of subtraction, trying to take away or restrict your freedoms.
Many of your policies, your ideas can expand elsewhere. Others are looking at them. And you do have a diverse support base. You do, across different communities. So I wonder if there's a chance that you, the 4 kiddos, your high school sweetheart, have talked at all about perhaps moving a little further to the south and landing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
You know, we don't talk about that stuff. I'm privileged to serve as governor of Pennsylvania, and it is my hope that we do a good job here and other states take note and they implement some of these policies or actions in their states. It's my hope that members of Congress who don't exactly have a track record of getting a whole lot done right now actually take note of what we're building here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and try and implement some of that on the national level. You know, I'm the only governor in the entire nation with a full-time divided legislature. And, you know, for us to get anything done here in Pennsylvania, it requires Republicans and Democrats to find common ground and get things done. We need more of that in Washington, D.C. So, look, I hope that folks do take note of what we're doing here. I hope they see our policies as things that are lifting all people up, no matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love, who you pray to, and that can be a model for others. And we're focused on that job and that work, not on the broader national politics.
Well, and with this one, Governor, Black Americans have something called an invitation to the cookout. We want to know that as a white person, someone who doesn't look like us, you feel comfortable around us. Again, you have a history of being, some would argue, everything to everyone. You do relate to other communities well.
So the governor came here the Saturday before the election.
Yes, he did.
And he danced on this stage and he ran up and down the stage.
Dance might be an overstatement. I mean, I moved a little.
But I am delighted because when he came here that Saturday, he was not governor. But I am honored today that he is governor, and welcome to the enterprise.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Clark. I said I'd be back, and I gave you my word, and I'm back. And I'm back today to make a critically important announcement. I wanted to be here at the Enterprise Center.
What do your Black constituents tell you? What kind of conversations are you having with people of color?
I spent a lot of time with them, listening, engaging, understanding, and then in my job, implementing, right, or executing on those things we talk about. We talk a lot about violence, an unacceptable level of violence in our communities, and the ways in which they want more police in their communities, but police who are properly trained, who look like them, who go through all the rigors of being prepared to be a sworn police officer to keep them safe. We talk about inequities in our education system, and I'm working hard to address that by giving parents more options for their kids and funding our public schools.
It was really an honor for me to follow in the footsteps of great leaders and history makers who have spoken to Lincoln graduates in the past. Leaders like the great Booker T. Washington, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and others who talked about the debt our nation owes to this university and these graduates. They were right. When I spoke here in May, I vowed to you that as your governor, I would work to help pay down that debt. And today is one of those down payments on that debt we owe you, with an increase in their funding of more than 21%. It should be lost on no one that Lincoln is one of 4 state-related institutions in this Commonwealth, along with the aforementioned Pitt, Penn State, and Temple. And I must tell you, Lincoln is the only university to receive an increase of that amount in this year's budget.
We talk a lot about how economic opportunity exists in some communities, but not all, and the arbitrary barriers to entry for so many things. And then I try and act on it. Let me give you just one concrete example of the many dozens that we've put in place since I've been governor. On my first day in office, speaking of those arbitrary barriers, my first day in office, I signed an executive order doing away with the college degree requirement for 92% of our state government jobs. So that's about almost 70,000 jobs. Why do I tell you this? Because that college degree requirement seemingly was nothing more than an arbitrary barrier to entry. And I wanted to make sure that all folks, by the way, people of color, folks who look like me, had access to opportunity in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and weren't restricted by these arbitrary rules that hold people back. And what we have seen since we've done away with that arbitrary degree requirement is greater diversity in our applicant pool. More people saying, hey, you know what? These folks actually want someone like me to apply and maybe want me to be part of their department or whatever the case may be. That sort of arbitrary barrier to entry is something that's held us back. Another example is the way in which we use the purchasing power of this Commonwealth to either shut out opportunity or create more opportunities. I made it a priority of mine to have far more minority businesses compete for contracts with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now, why do I think that's important? Well, with more competition, the Commonwealth can purchase that product, whatever it is, probably at a more competitive rate, right? So that's good for the Commonwealth. But from that Black-owned small business or Latino-owned small business, whatever the case may be, they're now given an opportunity to participate in our economy, to create opportunities for accruing generational wealth, to hire more employees for that Black-owned business, and to create more financial stability in the years to come. And so what we are doing, thanks to that effort, is we're creating more opportunity in Pennsylvania, more opportunity to join our ranks of employment, more opportunity to do business with us, and the list goes on and on. I just cite those 2 as concrete examples that have been born out of those conversations I've had with folks at church, after church, in their community centers, walking their main streets, you name it. And those conversations have affected me as a leader, and now I'm in a position, thank God, as governor, to be able to implement them and execute them to the betterment of all people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, look for an invite, Governor, to the cookout. I think you qualify, you get one. We appreciate you so much, Governor Josh
Thank you.
Shapiro. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.